From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2039, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, November 30th, 2016. As the northeastern corner of New Zealand's South Island tries to clear out from this month's major earthquake, one local amateur has taken stock of his opportunity to help, not just in that moment, but in the future.
On holiday in Waiā, at the time a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck New Zealand on Monday the 14th of November, Daniel Ayres at L1 DFA found himself a few miles from its epicentre. Being there already with his handheld radio, Daniel was among the few who could get involved immediately in that rural region.
I only had a handheld dual band radio with me, and so I was able to get into an amateur repeater on 146.975 megahertz, and that allowed me to talk to people in Christchurch and in the wider area around the northern part of the South Island. And they told me straight away that we'd just had a direct hit. I was able to quickly scoot out into Christchurch and swap the car that I was driving for my SUV, which was fitted out for emergency communications on HF and VHF, and had everything necessary ready to go to talk to anybody anywhere. So I took that vehicle back into Waiā, and it was using that I was able to participate more fully in providing some communications.
Daniel also worked for hours using the civil defence system and equipment before being asked to switch to his own amateur radios to help the New Zealand Fire Service pass messages to their regional office in Christchurch, 100 miles away.
What I found was very interesting was that the quote-unquote amateur VHF network were more reliable in this instance, and this was not the only instance that we've seen this in this part of the country, but the amateur infrastructure was more reliable than the radio communications infrastructure put in by civil defence.
The next challenge, Daniel said, is not just preparing for the next quake that is surely to come, or the series of inevitable aftershocks, but finding a way for radio amateurs to establish a system of response on HF that will help this rural nation more reliably. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Jim Meechan, ZL2BHF.
Once again, amateur radio succeeds when all else fails. Our final story this week, in keeping with the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S., is about gratitude. Here's Neil Rapp, WB9 VPG.
For more than 50 years, amateur radio operators were grateful for the spring ritual of the Dayton Hamvention, which was held at Hera Arena in Trotwood, Ohio. Now the arena has been shut down, and the massive global gathering of amateurs has found a new home at the Greene County Fairgrounds starting in 2017. Pieces of arena history, especially keepsakes of Hamvention history, are being auctioned off online. The online auctioneer, Everything But the House, began accepting bids on Thanksgiving Day, the 24th of November, and the auction concludes Wednesday, the 30th of November. No doubt there will be many among the tens of thousands of radio amateurs, two generations of visitors, wanting something by which to remember Hamvention's longtime home. For many hams, though, this will be simply a harvest of memories, some of them precious indeed. Although bidding on all items starts at $1, nostalgia is actually beyond any price. It's easy enough just to own Hera memories themselves. They're bought easily with gratitude for the good years and the friendships that flourished under that roof. And all of that knows no season.
As Neil says, the auction ends today, so if you want something, you'd better head to ebth.com and enter Hera in the search box. For the rest of this week's Amateur Radio News, please listen to the full Amateur Radio Newsline report online on a repeater near you, or on shortwave radio station WTWW at 9930 and 5085 kilohertz. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at www.arnewsline.org. With Jim Meechan, ZL2BHF, Neil Rapp, WB9 VPG, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW73. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now, here's the solar update with Dr. Tamitha Scove.
The sun gets into the holiday spirit and gives us a show by popping off a few big flares, and an old coronal hole begins its return Earthside with a promise of more aurora. Those stories and more in the news this week. The sun brings the holiday cheer early this year with region 2615. It kind of was starting on the backside, but as it's rotated into Earth view, it's really started growing like crazy. We've been watching it pop off like half a dozen flares in the last day or so, with 2 of them being M-class flares. That means you amateur radio operators are beginning to feel the sting a little bit. Your noise levels and your signal fades are probably having an issue every now and again. And it's continuing to grow. It's going to enter the Earth strike zone here within the next few days. But all these flares have been impulsive, so no solar storms have been launched that are Earth-directed or otherwise, but we are continuing to watch it. Meanwhile, we've got a coronal hole that you can't really see quite yet, but it's just beginning to round the edge of the east limb, and it should be into Earth strike zone in about 10 days. Switching to our M-flare threat meter, you can see we've been pretty quiet for quite some time. We've just been kind of drowsing along here. And then suddenly ramping up right there, bam, that was the emergence of region 2615 in Earth view. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flares at least. 2 of them are M-class flares, and it just keeps coming. Bam, bam, bam. This thing is firing rapid fire because it's growing so quickly. So we're keeping an eye on it, but these are causing problems for you ham radio operators. Expect your signal fades. Expect to be knocked out momentarily with these radio blackouts, but probably not for too long a period of time. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook for the coming week, as you can see, we are now in the yellow. Thanks to region 2615, NOAA's giving us about a 20% chance of an M-class flare over at least the next few days. After that, we'll kind of see whether or not it's continuing to grow or it's going to die down. Oftentimes, these things fire off a lot and then they die down. So we might see some fading here in the next few days of this particular region. So you amateur radio operators, you're just going to have to kind of get through the next few days. Expect to have signal fades, expect to have radio blackouts. They won't last all that long before they die back down a little bit, but you're going to get them frequently. So just expect it's going to be a little annoying for you. The one nice thing is that you notice that the solar flux levels have now risen, so we're back into the green just barely. So when there aren't solar flares, you should actually enjoy some pretty good propagation. So the space weather this week has really picked up. The sun has gotten into a festive mood. It's popping off M-class flares, kind of like paparazzi at a red carpet event. Unfortunately, this means you amateur radio operators kind of have to deal with the annoyance of these impulsive flares that will give you some radio blackouts and definitely signal fades, especially if you're on the day side of the Earth and near the gray line. So expect those annoyances easily through the next 3 days, maybe even through the week. We'll see if this region settles down or if it continues to grow. I'm Tamitha Scove. Thank you for watching.
So nice to have Dr. T back with us again this week with some good stuff. Now, I want to tell you about something going on. The USS Batfish Amateur Radio Club, they're having a special event station coming up this weekend in honor of the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Bring those images up for me, Brian, if you would. They're going to start operating Friday night, maybe around 1900 CST, run up to some unknown time on Sunday. What you're looking at there, that is an actual mast from the USS Oklahoma that was bombed and destroyed and sank at Pearl Harbor 75 years ago. They don't know the exact time or frequencies, but it's more of an ad hoc operation as opposed to a museum ship weekend. They'll have 2 call signs on the air, WW2OK in honor of the battleship USS Oklahoma, which was BB-37. There it is. That was in port at the time of the attack, and WW2SUB, that is for the submarine USS Batfish. Well, there it's it right there, SS-310. Yes, there's a submarine in Oklahoma. Go figure. They do the Oklahoma thing because, of course, they have a piece of that fire control mast from the ship, and it's in Muskogee, Oklahoma. If you have a chance to go by there and operate, if you're going to be in the area, or, of course, try to catch them on the air as well. Mitch, KE5HWW, who is the president of the Batfish and Oklahoma Amateur Radio Club. So good stuff. Get out there and operate and do your part to help commemorate 75 years, wow, since Pearl Harbor.